you want to go, you can take Nextdoor with you. All the local talk programs, all local sports, and a great mix of 70s, 80s classic rock you can now take anywhere you want to go by download the Nextdoor radio app today. Available Google and Apple stores.
This is Lewis Bowling with Looking Back into Granville County History. Berea was once known as Walnut Grove because of the many walnut trees, just as Oak Hill and Sassafras Fork, now called Stovall, got their names from trees. Stovall was also called Albin for a very short while around 1887. Its name was changed to Stovall in honor of John Stovall, who donated the land for the railroad to come through. Just across the Granville County border is Virgilina, Virginia, which takes its name from the two state lines it sits on, Virginia and North Carolina. So it is called Virgilina. The community of Grissom in Granville County is named for the Grissom family, especially Dr. Eugene Grissom. In that same vicinity of Granville County is a section pronounced as Hurricane because of a hurricane that came through in the late 1800s and did extensive damage. Reports from the time had a destruction zone of 2 miles wide and 10 miles long in Granville and Wake counties. When asked about the hurricane, the good folks in this section of the county near Wilton had the habit of pronouncing hurricane as hurricane. Wilton, by the way, once had a post office and was known as Ford Creek. Wilton is named for the Wilton family, especially Benjamin Wilton. The Wilton family operated the Wilton Inn before the Civil War.
Discover the rich history of Granville County at the Granville Museum in historic downtown Oxford. From science and military to moonshine and art gallery and so much more. The Granville Museum specializes in unique, one-of-a-kind exhibits that tells the story of Granville. Small groups are welcome and a conference room is available for group meetings. Granville Museum is a small nonprofit open Tuesday through Thursday, 10 to 4, and by appointment. Interested in membership or further information, you can contact 919-693-9706. Discover rich history of Granville County at the Granville Museum in historic downtown Oxford. For more information, 919-693-9706.
From the lake to the beach or just right next door, Deep Blue HVAC can make sure you're up and running today correctly. No excuse, no reason not to be prepared for every season. Give Charles with Deep Blue HVAC a call today at 919-725-1026. Whether it's hot or cold in your home, get that temperature gauge in the perfect zone. 919-725-1026 to contact Deep Blue HVAC.
It's time for local talk here on Nextdoor Radio, nextdoorradio.com, and the Nextdoor Radio app. And welcome back to local talk here on Nextdoor Radio, nextdoorradio.com, and the Nextdoor Radio app. My name is Trey Stott. Thanks for joining us here by way of our not only our stream, but our website, now that you can listen live and watch live. We appreciate Ms. Kelly Siphon joining us here like she does every single Friday beginning at 10 p.m. She has applied Behavioral Happiness. This is Behavioral 911. I always forget to actually name the name of the show until the last part, so I remember this time around. But how are you today? Happy Friday.
So well. Yes, happy Friday to you.
It seems like this week has gone by extremely fast. January flew by like it was nothing. Mm-hmm. And so happy February to you. Of course, happy February to our listeners by way of our local talk here today. Quick, let's do our little 30-second infomercial on who you are, what you do, and we'll get into it, okay?
Absolutely. So I am Kelly Siphon. I'm the owner of Applied Behavioral Happiness, where we can help with challenging behavior while protecting the spirit. I can help address everything from whining and tantrums to big meltdowns. I often will have clients who have trauma, big fears or phobias, or those big tantrum meltdown challenges that they need some support with.
Fantastic. And of course, my son has witnessed what you do at the farm. We're so
Yes.
excited for him and just literally just yesterday said, I'm ready to go back. I'm ready to go see Miss Kelly. So there you go.
Good.
He was excited. Because again, he's had some rough days the last couple weeks. I mean, it is you're gonna run into that. But it's a
Absolutely.
matter of creating the kind of the mindset of, all right, we're going to take away your frustration about something and about this object, which makes no sense why you're arguing.
Mhm.
But what can we do to change that? And that's what he's learned already at the going to the farm for the very first time of, hey, I'm scared, I'm nervous, but I'm going to take a step back and kind of control my mood swings, should you say.
Absolutely. Getting that modulation down
Mhm.
into a place that it's manageable for the skills that he has right now, and looking at how do we create that grit, that moment of, or rather that skill of, I can go through difficult moments and they don't tear me down or pull me way out of that sort of standard deviation of things that I can handle.
And so one of the topics that we have for today, and it's really kind of a sad kind of situations where you're losing a loved one or talking about death or talking about losing a family member or a friend or whatever. Um, talk to our listeners about a little bit more about that conversation with your child or really an adult, how to kind of create something kind of better in that situation.
Absolutely. So this is a part of the tantrums and meltdowns course
Mhm.
that I do, because loss of a loved one can lead to a lot of surprising behaviors. For example, if you've got a young child, you may see them lose their potty training, or you may see suddenly someone who is very outgoing and gregarious become very shut in for a time. So I want to make sure that you know that there's a lot of resources out there to begin. If you don't know how to start this conversation, you can call someone like me. You can call one of the local grief coaches. I've got one in particular on that course that I'm very excited to
Okay.
announce once it's all up and going. But looking at that, where we're often going to start is, what can we understand outside of this situation? If we can get ahead of the actual loss, we're going to be in a much better spot.
And it's such a hard, I mean, and I'm gonna use my son because I like to bring in personal side of things here, a lot, of course, because I love being a dad, but he's hard. I mean, let's be honest, he's hard. But you look at it as just last week or so,
Mhm.
he was talking about, hey, what happens if we do this, this, this? What happens if I happen to suffocate? Or like, for
Sure.
example, he put his head in a pillowcase today. I said, dude, get out. What are you doing? And so I don't as a parent, it's hard to be able to have that conversation because I don't want to talk about it. I mean, let's be honest.
Absolutely.
My wife just lost her Mima, who was 96 years old. Went to her funeral 2 weeks ago,
Mhm.
and again, it's a hard situation. He stayed at school; he didn't even go because we didn't want him to kind of see all what was happening,
Sure.
and so that's just hard.
It's incredibly
Yeah.
hard. And the farm context can be really helpful for this. For example, we had a couple of kiddos over at the farm when an animal passed.
Mhm.
And it was one that they had gotten to know and they had spent time with.
Oh
And
wow!
it was one of those situations that could be, holy smokes, I can't believe these kids are having to go through this. Or we were able to take in the direction of, this is a moment where you guys are the heroes, where you made sure that this animal was safe and comfortable as much as possible. And now it's the next step, it's the next time. And my goal for that session in of itself was to make sure, again, that they came out as the heroes and as people who had steps they could take. That is really key. It's not about being the victim of the situation, and this is so sad, but especially with kids, if they have a step toward being a part of the solution, that's where you take it from, this is likely traumatizing, to this is likely a growth moment. And for this particular group, the next time they came, they were really excited to be there because they knew they had done something good to help this little creature, even though it ended very sadly. And they were able to come and go, okay, our next step is we want to put flowers
Mhm.
where this animal is. And it was so interesting, as the next session came up, we started having conversations like, well, what happens if your heart stops?
Wow!
Can you get it going again? What does it mean when something is buried? We talked about how when we buried the little animal, that it's buried under a tree and it's going to become the berries. And that's very hard for
Mhm.
someone, especially say kindergarten age. Like, well, I don't want the little bunny to become a berry.
Mhm.
Yeah, that's tough. I don't have an answer for that.
Yeah.
but I can open that moment, recognize that it's tough, and just allow for questions to come from there. If I don't have the answer, that's okay. I'll just acknowledge how it feels for both of us.
So what kind of questions in that do you receive when after answering a few the stuff that you can answer?
Mhm.
What kind of questioning and kind of look into that?
Sure. So some of the questions are going to fall under what could be considered from adult eyes as
Okay.
insensitive. Like, well, how do you bury a horse? Or can I dig up the bones? Can I see where we're at in this place? And it's important from the position of teaching about death to go, this is a natural curiosity that is leading to a lack of fear. And not meaning lack of fear, I'm going to go do crazy things, but a lack of fear as in when crisis hits, I know I'm strong enough to get through it. I am willing to ask questions. I'm willing to explore difficult things. So a lot of the questions come around just a natural curiosity. And then in those moments, we can talk about which questions are super appropriate to ask here and when might this be an insensitive question to ask. For example, if you're at a funeral, maybe not the question to ask, you know? But when you're on the farm, we can have those really open conversations that allow for this scary, deep subject to be discussed really, really deeply.
Kelly Syphon joins us here by way of our video and audio. This is a local talk program here Monday through Friday, beginning at 10 a.m. here on Next Door Radio. So put the kids aside for just a moment. The conversation that parents will have with the child once something, their favorite animal, or even if a stuffed animal loses something.
Sure.
Have that conversation with the parent to be able to have a conversation with the child.
Absolutely. So there's a couple resources I want to name to begin. Looking up Sesame Street, they have a number of videos where it shows these conversations where a Sesame Street character has passed and the parent and the child Sesame Street character are talking about it.
Yeah.
So that's a wonderful one. There's a number of books that I've linked on my resources page on my website that are also fantastic. The big key, every single grief specialist I talk to, every single person that I've discussed this with that comes from that side, says be as honest as you can be within your comfort and be as straightforward. So, for example, we're talking about death. We may not be talking about passing away, going to the other side, all of those more softer, ethereal wordings, because that can become confusing. Now, again, this needs to be within your comfort, but from the professional consultation and from my own work, we tend to lean toward the very truthful, very straightforward wording.
And so being the truthful self, that's tough. I mean,
incredibly,
because you see the emotions out of the kids. Again, my son is 5. I see the emotions just on everyday life. I can't imagine when he actually witnesses something, he loses something. And that's, to me as a dad, that's just a hard kind of conversation, hard for me to kind of picture that.
Absolutely. And the difficult part about grief is grief doesn't equal sadness. Grief is every single emotion. So you may see in that moment that they make a joke that, again, may seem rather insensitive, or that they become very angry, or they do become very sad, or they're very frustrated. You will see all of these different emotions and you're not sure which ones are going to come up first or next. So as you step into this conversation, making sure that you're in the right place to be able to have all of this occur around you can be really difficult, especially if you're experiencing the loss yourself. That's why getting ahead of this and having those conversations before we have a big loss can be really, really helpful.
Kelly Syphon joins us here by way of our video and audio. This is Local Talk on Next Door Radio. Head over to our website at nextdoorradio.com. You can watch, but also you can listen back if you missed this live that airs every single Friday at 10 a.m. and get that right here. And so, all right, so let's move on. What kind of events you have coming up at the farm or at your place of actual business?
Yes.
What kind of events do you have coming up?
So the big thing that we have coming up is I have an amazing local nutritionist and speech therapist that is doing a wild foraging class in April. And I'm so excited.
Okay.
So we're going to have a group for the little ones, probably ages about 3 to 5, and then a group about 9 to 12. If you're in between, we'll talk to you about which will be better for your child's maturity in the younger group or the older group, and then a group of teens going out on the farm and learning how to forage within that space. So what is edible out here? How do we identify it? It's going to be really, really cool.
Yes, little man would have a blast.
Oh, absolutely.
To be able to do that. Again, he's 5 years old. He loves life. I mean, so it's You could tell he just loves life and it's fun. All right, how can they get a hold of you? What's the best place to contact? Email, Facebook, everything.
Absolutely. So you can find me at Applied Behavioral Happiness on just about every social media platform. You can go to appliedbehavioralhappiness.com. Any of those red request appointment buttons, you can get a free 30-minute discovery call with me to talk about whatever you need to talk about. If you prefer to call, you can call 984-235-1058.
Ms. Kelly, thank you. Always a pleasure having you here in the studio. We appreciate you. God bless. Have a great weekend.
Thank
okay?
you so much.
My name is Trace Knott. She is Kelly Siphon. She's with Applied Behavioral Happiness, and this is Behavioral 911 here on Nextdoor Radio, nextdoorradio.com, and the Nextdoor Radio app. We'll see you later.